אז אני אתחיל צהריים טובים. ובכן, נרשמתם לסדנה הזו? ובכן, אני שואלת, יש לנו את המיילים, את האימיילים שלכם, ואנחנו גם נשלח לכם קישור לסדנה הזו שהיא מוקלטת, וגם נשלח לכם בצגת וקטיר ומספר הפרטים שהם יעזור לנו על כיצד לכתוב מאמר בכאן לכם. הסדנה הזאת היא בעצם סדנה של חברה מסחרית, של Elsevier, שכולכם מכירים אותם, שאנחנו כמובן מנועים למספר גדול ובלתי נתפס של ואת אלקטרונים, ויש לנו באמת פה הזדמנות נתפס לקבל ככה אינסייט, לקבל שאני מחשבים באמת לקבל מצוינות, אינסייט פנימי מאנתוני. I'm sure that you can speak for yourself and then present yourself. Okay, you will do it better than I do. אותי בכל ששומעים? אני פחות חשובה. You have to go to the microphone.
I wanted to stay here.
אוקיי. יש לכם פה שתייה. אלה ששם בסוף אתם תקועים איתנו על מסגרת, אני לא יודעת איך תקועים פה, ומי שיוצא לשפוט שיגיד לי, אני אעביר לו. תקשיבו, הסדנה הזו בערך, פחות או יותר, בשעה וחצי ושעתיים, זה אמור לסייע לכם, אתם מוזמנים לשאול שאלות כמובן. ואני חושב שאנתוני קצת ירחיב על הדרך שבה נפעל. אז תהנו.
Fine, thank you. Thank you for coming here and sharing your few hours with me, 2 hours with me and with Max. As you heard, it's sort of introduction here. I'm a publisher at Elsevier. Before that, many years ago, I was a polymer chemist, and so my main job is managing some of Elsevier's journals. So Elsevier's got lots of journals. I look after just 15 of them. But that's my day job. My hobby is doing these sorts of workshops in various parts of the world. So that's why I'm here today. And so there's a lot of slides here. And if you're really, really keen, you can write lots and lots of notes. Or alternatively, you wait a couple of days and you'll get the link where you can download the whole PDF. It's your choice, basically. If I say anything you don't quite understand, then stop me straight away and I'll get my attention first. And then I will re-explain or explain in a different way. And part of this presentation will also be by Max Bierzo, who's a customer consultant for this university, and he'll be talking about some other interesting ways you can get information you might not have thought about or might not be using currently. We often find that people just use something basically and don't know some of the extra things around it. So the purpose of this event, workshop, is to try and get you guys to be more successful at publishing papers. It's reasonable work. If you don't publish papers, basically you might have done the research, but no one believes you. So you've actually really got to get your stuff published. Once it is published, you've got to get cited. Because, again, the citations are sort of the currency, the Bitcoin of science, to show that people appreciate what you've published. And so that's the whole process. And what we found, we've been doing these workshops for about 15 years, I suppose. And we started doing them because we found so many clever people were making silly mistakes. So we started doing a whole tips and tricks workshop, which has got bigger and bigger and bigger. This slide set is a bit too long for time we have allocated now, but basically any slides we don't get to, you can easily read through on your own when you get the slide set later. So that's the idea. So how to write great papers, of course, how to get published. Is it easy to get published? It used to be a lot easier. 20, 30 years ago, the typical rejection rate was 30%. So 70% of you guys got accepted. Now it's reversed. Now the typical rejection rate is 70%. So only 30% get accepted. So how can we make you one of the 30%? That's my aim today. Hopefully it's your aim too. So we will go through a whole bunch of slides, and hopefully any questions we'll deal with. At the end, those who want to stay on, we can do some demonstrations, we can go into depth and all sorts of things, answer questions one-on-one, or if there's time at the end, answer questions to the group. It's an interesting sort of room because if you at the back decide you want to go out, you'll disturb everyone. So hopefully you're okay. And hopefully you don't need the restroom. So whatever, we'll see. Who here has published a paper already? Okay. More than 10 papers? More than 50 papers? 100? No, I'm serious, because actually there are certain thresholds. It gets easier after about 20, they tell me. But everyone disagrees. Who's trying to publish a paper but hasn't quite got there yet? Okay, great, perfect. I wish I had been taught this sort of thing at this point in your life, because I wasn't. And so for me, it's why I think it's so important to come out to universities and share this information. So let's see if this is going to work. Is it going to work? It's not going to work. Do you love this? It says, it's dead. Plan B. Plan B is to try and get a slide changer. It's there, it's alive and well, it's just not working. So, keyboard. It's there. It's just try again.
One, but I'm not sure.
Well, let's sort of see. It's no, it's deciding it can't find the thing now. Okay, right. So we will. We'll try doing it this way. Oh yes, that's fine. It worked earlier, but then he turned it on and off. So that was the keyboard. Is you can't get to the back.
Or you can use arrows there.
No, Control Delete. Going. Hello. I think you turn it on and off or something because it doesn't actually find this anymore. You killed it.
Oh no, I don't. I know. I know.
So what do you mean?
It was not on the PowerPoint up.
Because you were messing around doing the microphone. Right, okay.
I'm listening to you.
Fine. You see, Big Brother.
Listening.
Thank you about that. Now let's try again. Okay, right. That just wasted a few minutes. Anyway, so this will be interesting on recording. A lot of people are thinking, what's going on here? Anyway, this is a sort of feeling you get when you send your paper in for peer review. You got a nice paper, you want it to be accepted, and somehow your friends, your colleagues, your peers become hostile. And the referee comments are really sometimes quite vicious. You know, they get the clubs and the axes and the guns, and you got all sorts of swords, and of course the Grim Reaper, just trying to stop you get your paper accepted. That's what it seems like. It's not like that, that's what it seems like. And so what we'll deal with today also is how you can write your paper in a way so that referees can be a bit easier to evaluate it and also give you some suggestions. Sometimes they'll be hostile, not very pleasant, but their heart's in the right place normally. They're trying to make your paper a bit better. We'll see. Lots of things that we're going to be covering. Thinking about journals and what you're going to be publishing and where you're going to send it to, which journals, what sort of article types, how you write the article, things like peer review, social media, open access, ethics, a whole bunch of things. So again, a lot to squeeze in 2 hours. Briefly, why are there so many journals? Because there's so many of you, basically. And it's more of you growing, well, you're not growing, but the number of you scientists is growing year by year by year, about 3%, which means there's about 4% more papers being published every year. So people tend to be multiple authoring. And that's why there are more journals year in, year out, year out, year out. This is the story of us. Scientific, technical, medical publishing is around 2,000 publishing houses. It's about 28,000 journals, generating about 1.8 million articles a year. So you, and all the other researchers in the world, are making 1.8 million articles a year currently, and next year will be 4% more, and so on, and so on, and so on. So it's our job as a publishing house to make sure you've got the right place to publish and the right place to read. All publishing houses have that viewpoint, all the good ones anyway. Their viewpoint is to make sure things are there before you know you need them. Doesn't always happen, but we try and do that process. You could have any publishing house here. We've got the Elsevier Orange, of course, and the logo. It could be Springer, it could be IEEE, it could be Wiley. The same basic idea that we get in papers, the editors look at them, some they decide to desk reject, they send them out for peer review, the referees comment on it, some are accepted, some aren't. The ones that are accepted, they get prepared, they get put into production and put online or in print or both, and then people read them and cite them, and around it goes again and again and again. The whole publishing cycle. And in terms of us, because we get about 18% of all articles out there. So it's a reasonable size. We're not, everyone says, oh, Elsevier, there's no one else left. Nonsense, 18%, 18%. So it's about 13,000 editors, and the desk reject rate varies from journal to journal, field to field, 30 to 60% desk reject rate. And then, of course, it goes out to lots of reviewers, typically 2 or 3 per paper. It varies on the journal and the topic. About 1/3 of them get accepted, and it goes into Science Direct, which is our version. Just as you have Springer Link, ours is Science Direct. And then, of course, it gets lots and lots of downloads. So that's the cycle that we saw. And that's where we saw all these things going wrong. We saw people doing silly things. So, yeah, the people who have been in the industry a long time and researching a long time, this was the real special last year of print only. 1998 was the year we had PDFs online, a bit crude system, but great uptake. And so by 2009, 75% of usage was online, and by 2024, 95%. And who knows when we'll stop printing, I don't know. The important thing for us is you must remember every single person is going to see your article online or as a PDF. They're not actually going to see the article in the journal in print in the library. So always remember that. Think of the reader. The reader will see your electronic version. How can you make the electronic version better? That's the game plan. Of course, with more electronic access, what you've got is much more downloads and much more usage. Often, though, people tend to skim and grab what they need, as we all do. And there's lots and lots of extra usage that didn't used to be when it used to be in print. So that's interesting. And of course, there's new publishing models. You've got things like open access, which is an interesting experiment. It is an experiment. It's a successful experiment, but it's an experiment. It's only been going, 20 years? Whereas the subscription model's been going for 250 years. It's very different beast. Delayed open access, open archiving. And there's all sorts of different sorts of innovations coming through in publishing. So that's all the things that are happening sort of out there behind the scenes. If you don't know how journals work, this is, in effect, you being shown behind the scenes in a theatre, not just the front stage, but everything that's happening behind. And that's actually what's happening here. So, as I said, if we don't publish, it never happened. That's the reality. The reality is, you can say to someone, oh, I did some great research. Well, yeah, why'd you publish it? Well, I haven't yet. It's still in my drawer. Doesn't help. You haven't published, it didn't happen. You've got to publish it somewhere. And where you're going to publish it, I'll talk about in a moment. And what you're going to publish? Useful stuff, of course. Useful material. You might have a personal reason for publishing. The typical is to finish your degree. It's, of course, the classical Scandinavian model is you you publish 3 papers, you write the introduction and the conclusion, and you defend that as your thesis. So that's only up there. The rest of the world, you write your thesis, and parallel to that, you're trying to publish. Because that means when you are defending your thesis, then the examiner's thinking, okay, well, is this research publishable? If you've done it, that ticks the box. Funding, there's never enough funding, we know that. Grant proposals are becoming less and less successful. You have to write more and more of them. It used to be that you would be lucky to get 1 in 5 of your grant proposals accepted. Now it's closer to 1 in 20. It really is much more difficult to get funded now. And so therefore that whole process of applying for funding is partly they look at what you're asking for, what research you're going to do, and looking at you, the research team, what you've actually done, what have you published. Because that's their criteria of your quality, not if you're a nice person and go and buy people drinks at the bar, but actually if you've actually published something of value. So the publishing articles is the whole bedrock for this whole process. The same with getting tenure, getting promotion. So many people will be applying for certain positions. How do you get on the shortlist? Partly through your publication history. You might have some personal reason for publishing. Doesn't matter. The important thing is, once you have been through the peer review process and you've published, everyone assumes that what you've published is okay. And it is most of the time. So if you see it out there, it's okay. There are a few cases we know of dubious articles, and it's not that high. It's about 1 in 5,000, 1 in 8,000 articles are dubious. The rest are okay. We still have to deal with those, but it's not like everything out there is fake science. If it's been through peer review, more often than not, it's okay. And of course, what you're going to publish is what you've done well. What are you going to research? Something that needs to be done. So you would be looking at things like new original results, useful. You could do the Me Too things, the PLOS One, the helium and so on, whereby it's just sound science. Better publish something original because that makes it better for the reader to read something new and with some innovation in there. Of course, a new method's great. People love new methods for the simple reason that it helps them in their work. And then they'll use your method and cite you. Reviews are useful also. That's not laboratory work, or it's not office work, or whatever. It's thinking work, pulling together various people's other work into some sort of concise review of a topic. Nowadays, though, you've often got to put some angle on it, whereby you're saying, well, this is all the various things, and here's a slant, some sort of evaluation of that work as to what perhaps has been strong points and what are sort of areas to focus on. So that's a more developed sort of review that's been coming in this last few years. And of course, what you shouldn't be doing is things that are not scientific. That's for blogs and the like. Out-of-date work, why? If people publish things that are more relevant than what you've got, it's more up to date, you don't publish what you're doing. You find something new to research. Duplications, no, because once it's published once, it's out there. It's findable by search engines. It's not like it's in some hidden book somewhere or some dusty journal. It's out there, it's findable. So once is enough. And of course, things that are just wrong shouldn't be published either. So to make an impact out there, you've got to have a strong manuscript, a real effective manuscript, something where you make an impact. And that's always a challenge, because if you're not used to writing articles, you're not used to writing strong statements, and that's a difficulty for learning. No one teaches you how to write scientific articles. You might have been taught how to read and write English. That is often literature, not scientific English. It's a different style. And there's no place that teaches you this, unfortunately. So we're trying with these sorts of workshops just to point you in the right direction. A good manuscript, useful, exciting, great, good content. Clear, logical, good presentation. But if it's good content and it's bad presentation, what a waste of your data. What if you've got an amazing, wonderful way of laying out all your presentation, but unfortunately, it is not much in there, hollow. That's also not very good. You need to have both to get somewhere. Okay? Less space somewhere, let's put seats. So how can you get your article out there making impact? What's a strong manuscript? Novel. Of course, it's new, not me too. As clear as you can be. And an interesting, exciting message. And scientists in general, researchers in general, we're not exciting people, are we? We're pretty boring people. Okay. But we can be excited about a message and pass that message on enthusiastically, some interesting things we found. And that's the important thing to think about. And of course, we've got to do it in a logical way. And it's interesting that many people, unless they're taught to think it, tends to do the process in a chronological order. We did this experiment, and that one, and that one, and that one, a chronological process. That does not help the reader. They don't want to know the sequence you did the experiment. They want to know why you did something and what's going through your head. So you've got to have a logical manner, not a chronological manner. So we did this, or here's a problem, we did this, we found this, here's what you think's going on, what do you think? That's that logical line running through that. And that's the important thing, is to step right back, not in the time sequence, but on the sequences to what was the problem, what you measured, and what you found, what the solution was. That's that logical process running through. And of course, you've also got to make sure that the reviewers and editors see the significance. Not just... we, in general, are not used to writing explicitly. We write implicitly. Well, I'm sure the referees will notice that that little graph is a bit different. I mentioned it in the figure legend. It's not enough. You've got to be really in their face. Here's what we found. Here's what we think this is going on. Here's what we think the benefits of this research are. And that is something that we're not used to doing. And particularly as junior people who've not written much, you've really got to get that significance out there and very clear. Because if you don't convince the reviewers and the editors about the significance of your paper, it won't get out there. That's the first threshold. Is it good enough to send out for peer review? Or is it not significant enough so it gets rejected? So that's the important thing, because editors and reviewers are busy people. There's very few editors who work full-time for a journal. Most of them work in their spare time. Most of them are full-time researchers. They're teaching and researching. They're writing for grant proposals. They're traveling to conferences and speaking there. The whole combination. And in their spare time, get a few articles here and there. Looking in, is it good enough to send out for my journal? Yes or no? If it is, send it out. To who? A referee, or 2 or 3. Those referees also busy people. So they've got the same sort of problem. So therefore, that's why you've really got to make sure it's very, very clear, easy to read. Because if you don't, it won't even get out there to be seen. Yeah, sure.
I have a question.
Absolutely, please.
About the word clear, it's so important. I find many articles that are really written not clear.
I agree.
And they are published. And I consider myself as someone who can understand.
I agree. Not all accepted articles are the best they could be. I'm giving you what to aim for. If you can't be quite clear enough, okay, be as clear as you can be. I know, sometimes people do write all over the place. Sometimes things get published and perhaps they shouldn't have been. And sometimes people don't explain themselves clearly. Also, publishing is a personal experience between an author, a reviewer, and an editor, and sometimes strange things happen there. And the result that gets published, you think, that's good. But we as publishers cannot interfere with the peer review process. We can't. It's not our job. Our job is to appoint editors and step back and let them do their thing, basically. So that's we will check up occasionally, see how it's going, and whether we renew them or not. But basically, we cannot interfere with the peer review process. But you're right. There's lots of things out there that are wrong. Yeah. Not all papers are 100% written well. I'm giving you best practice. Okay? So something to strive for, as opposed to me. So before you start writing, of course, you've got to work out, has it been done before or not? So you've got to go out there and check things. Go out and check, you know. Often, of course, before you're doing the research, your team in your department are doing research on other projects, and then what you do, you actually say, oh, well, that's been done, that has been done, that's still got to be done, so let's do this. And sometimes you'll also have people saying, well, should we do this, yes or no? Let's go and check. And so you check out on the internet and say, okay, is there people out there publishing stuff, yes or no? If they have, learn from them. Have they missed anything out? Can you somehow add more to that research project? If they've done exactly what you were going to do and you're totally blank, then look somewhere else. You've really got to make sure what's out there. And then once you have seen what's out there, that's a static moment in time. In the meantime, what's happening is that, of course, people are still researching. You're not the only one in the world researching this topic. Other people are doing the same thing. So how do you make sure that they you get results every so often as to what has been published, to make sure that you're actually... Interesting error message here. It's gone now. Wow. So this says that the internet is unstable. Well, that's life, you know. And that sums up the world. So anyway, the important thing is just to not just look once before you start studying, get your head down doing your experiments, but also keep up to date what's out there. Who's busy with your area? Who do you need to keep tabs on? Who do you need to see who's published something? When are they speaking at the next conference or whatever? Because those are your potential competitors or potential collaborators or potential people to cite. So from that point of view, you've got to know who they are. And everyone's a different field. You've got different sort of people in your network. And so I can't say this is a particular way to do it. But be aware what is happening out there. Once you have done your initial work to find out what has been published, you've still got to make sure before you do start to write and publish that no one actually publishes the same thing before you. The last thing you want to do is publish something, send something in, and the editor sends it back and says, this was published 3 months ago in this journal. You didn't notice, you didn't look. It's your job to look at these things up. Of course, you could use things like Google, rather not. That's good for finding a pizza restaurant or something. But the important thing is to find these good, precise search engines, depending on your field. If you happen to be in the medical area, you can use things like PubMed, but you can use Web of Science, you can use Scopus, Google Scholar, all useful things to find what's out there. This happens to be a screenshot from Scopus, because I happen to have access to this easily to do this. You can see what's been cited and also by whom. And so this happens to be protein folding, but just because I was at a protein folding conference. And there's an awful lot in this slide if you're in that field. So you can tell that there's around 2,500 to 3,000 papers a year being published, which means there's lots of competition, but also lots of grants if they can publish. So that field is stable. And also you can then sort here, it tells you the citation classics and so on. And you can see which institutes are very, very interesting, who's the most prolific. If it's in your field, you can see which countries are being very active. So if you were to say a filter on the UK, I did UK here, so it went down from 97,000 documents to 9,000 documents. So 10% of the world's papers on protein folding are in the UK. So if it's your field, then perhaps the UK is a place to go to find a particular position as a postdoc in that field. If you wanted to move to, say, Portugal to do protein folding, no way. They do almost nothing. So again, you just find all these things out because you've got access to this. You can find different people out there and go follow them and then track when they're publishing and then see what's going on. Strategic information gathering. As part of the slide set you'll get at the end, or in a few days' time, you'll also get a checklist, which is a useful sort of thing to show what is coming, what's useful, what is helpful to remember when you are publishing papers. So there's you in your department with a few people helping you, all busy with other things, multiple projects happening at once. So you might be the first author of one paper and the co-author of other papers. And the same with your other co-researchers are the same. They're the first author of a paper and you're a co-author on their paper and so on. This is what normally happens. So before you start to write, you and your co-authors, co-researchers say, okay, is everything here in place? Is it new? Is it interesting? Has it been done before? Has it been described exactly the same way, or can we put a different spin on it? Is it a hot topic? If you look at some cloud of words that are being cited using some sort of various websites do this, including Scopus, but you can see the same sort of thing. Is it a popular field or not? Are there solutions to problems? You found some papers are saying it's difficult to do this, and you found a way to do this. All these various things are ticking the box. Have you done enough experiments? Now, if you say, well, it's never enough, of course it's never enough. But if you wait till you get everything, it's a year's, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years work. No. When it's enough, can you tell a coherent story? Can you explain to the reader what you think is going on in a particular topic area? If you've got enough experiments for that, you're good. Then you've got all these things are there. You can say, okay, yes, all of them. Now we can start thinking about the manuscript. You start writing it? Not yet. You might think, yeah, I want to start writing it. What happens if you start to write your manuscript and everyone's happy with this wonderful, great manuscript, and you start looking for a journal to put it into? It's fine. But what happens if you find a nice journal and that journal says, actually, we have a word limit, which is half what you've written? If you then cut down half your text, or look for another journal which has no word limit, why not just first work out where you're going to want to send it to before you start writing? That's the basic idea. Is it going to be a full article? Is it going to be a short article? Is it going to be a case report or something? So if it's a short article, why a short article? You haven't got much data. You don't want to just fluff it out with more, with vagueness. So a short, concise article, a few pages. Or is it a full-length article? 10, 15, 20 pages. It's your choice. If you've got lots of data, go for the full one. The bigger the paper, typically, if it's got full of data, the more citations. If you start to slice and dice a bunch of data into multiple short papers, the number of citations you'll get will be lower than one big, healthy, meaty, long paper. The university might be happy because you published 5 papers, but the number of citations you'll get will not be 5 times what you would have got with the other one. So, yeah, so ask your co-authors, short paper, long paper. If you've got something that's so amazingly unique, you want to claim it for the world, publish it quickly in a short paper. That guarantees your intellectual property. Or put it in some data repository timestamped. So again, it's linked to you. So no one can say that they got it first. It's important. Data repository. We'll talk about that a bit later. There are things like Mendeley data and so on. You can store things. It's called a preprint server. A preprint server, you can put things up there before you actually publish them. So in effect, you are claiming it out there to the world. But it's a useful place to, if you're going to find negative results, just to put it out there to help other people. Yeah, preprint server of some sort.
אני צריכה לחלק לך שיש קצת על המאגר הזה שלנו. יהיה לנו גם כאן באוניברסיטה. מאגר לפריפרנס, מאמרים לפני פרסום, נקרא זה נובה, שמעתם על זה? אז אנחנו עכשיו נכנעים. כמובן, מה זה יעזור לי, ומה זה יעזור לי. זה בדיוק במקום, סטורי תנספיק עם יפרצה.
Yeah, fine, no problem. But I don't understand you. So.
שמעתם על הפגישה הזאת, הרבה מאוד כתבי עת. יש גם מהלך ב-2021 שבעצם אפשר יהיה לקבל גרנטים מאירופה אך ורק עם כתבי העת, או המאמר שאתה מפורסם בכתבות של open access. אז החלק שלנו, של האוניברסיטה, בעצם להגיד את כן, יש פה איזשהו open access, המאגר שלנו, שקיים בתוך האוניברסיטה, בקהילת האוניברסיטה, סגור לכל אחד מכם, כשאתם בעצם תוכל באמת להפקיד שם ולתת הרשאות. להחליט, לכל הציבור ולקהילה ספציפית. אבל אני חושבת שנעשה אולי איזה יום גם כשאנחנו בשעה וחצי שנדבר רק על הדבר הזה, ברגע שאנחנו גם נמציא את זה.
It's fun. Open access was open access.
I know. I assumed that I
Open
should.
access
You
was
will have to talk about it.
Open access, of course. Of course, it's just further down.
Yeah.
Absolutely, of course. But I'm sure you've got lots of stuff on open access on your
Open
university.
access right now is the main.
It's hot. Of course. I look after 15 journals, and 4 of them are open access. And they range from impact factor 1.5 to 8. Yeah. Serious stuff. Yes, okay. Anyway, back to this. So, new article types, maybe, different sorts, micro articles, whatever. Check the people who published a lot, they might have some advice. And then the next thing you're going to do is to work out where you're going to publish. Where you're going to publish is not that's good for you, but what's good for your readers. Where would the reader like to see it? Where would they expect to find it? That's the thing to think about, because if you think about where your comfort zone is, that's fine, but it's not about you, the author, it's about them, the reader. Where's their comfort zone? Where would they expect to see your work? If everyone has 10, 20, 30 different journals, which are their comfort journals, and if you're publishing in one of those journals which is appropriate for the reader, they're comfortable finding it there on a search engine. Oh, interesting title, know that journal, let's go look deeper. If they come across your article and it's in a journal they don't know, then that's a bit weird. Why do they publish there? Should I go look? Yeah, let's just go look. But they're not as comfortable with it. And that's the sort of thing you've got to think about. You've got to try and find 4, 5, 6 different potential journals. With those potential journals, you're then going to go and narrow it down some more. So you and your co-authors are actually going to be looking at where your various references are coming from. That'll give you a clue, maybe. If you've got, say, 10, 15 of your references are from one particular journal, maybe that's a candidate journal. And so that's a possibility. Candidate journals. Is a journal peer-reviewed to the right level? Some journals are really, really, really aggressively peer-reviewed. 99% reject rate, like that in Nature. Tough, aggressive referees, not very helpful at all. Also, you've got the other extreme, some university presses and some of these open access journals, whereby there's almost no peer review. And the time it takes to do the peer review is the time it takes to type up the invoice. But you want the middle area, the area where you actually have useful comments and referees make your paper better. That's what we're aiming for. How about who's the journal's audience? Do you know who's going to read that journal? No one puts their hand up to say, I read this. You've got to see, if you see articles in there on your topic area, those authors are also those readers, and so therefore that's a way to think of it that way. And how fast is a journal? Is that important? Yes, it is. Because the faster you can publish, the faster you can use that paper in a grant proposal or application to become a postdoc somewhere else or whatever. And so therefore, speed to publish is very important. And of course, you're also in competition with other people out there. If you're first, then you're not second, basically. And so how do you make sure you publish in a fast journal? Some journals tell you how fast they publish, some don't. You can easily check it out. You go to, say, Springer Link, Science Direct or something. You go and look at the cover data of the particular volume. You look at a few articles, when it's submitted, when it's revised, when it's accepted. Okay, that gives you a certain idea. 3 or 4 articles in that particular volume gives you a feel for that particular journal. Check the other journals, and you might be surprised and sometimes horrified how long these take. Some could be as quick from start to finish, from being submission to being accepted, as 8 weeks. Some could be 80 weeks, and everything in between. It's always useful to do this. It's an interesting exercise if you don't know, just to compare these various candidate journals. And of course, you've got things like the impact metrics, impact factor, site score, SNP, and so on. Open access, if you need to or want to publish open access again, that will narrow down the number of journals, because there's only about 20% of the journals out there are open access. And so therefore that narrows down your options. But again, if that's your choice, that's another factor in getting these candidate journals. And of course, if you are publishing open access, make sure it's a real journal. There are some fake journals out there. Yeah.
So, thank you for this advice. I think in reality, all the journey is much more complicated. So basically, you publish after 4, 5, 10 rejections. And my question is, do you have advice for all this journey, like, how to plan where to submit for the first journal, and do you understand the question?
Yes, I do. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, yes. I'll get to that, sort of. I hope my explanation is detailed enough for you. Otherwise, we'll talk some more afterwards. Okay. Yeah, it is. It's, yeah.
You mentioned fake journals. Now, there used to be a list online.
Yeah.
List.
It's called the Beale list.
Yeah, it's not really updated.
It's archived because he had death threats. He stopped doing it. A company took it over, and now they charge people to access it. They're charging universities to access the whitelist, so-called, and the blacklist.
We are the blacklist.
You paid for it, have you? Okay. Yeah, it's expensive. Okay, good, great. So you don't need. Yeah, good. So you don't need to go for the archive version, but you just go to the library and ask. Yeah, absolutely. And if you come across a journal that's on that blacklist, it's not one of your candidate journals. As simple as that. Predatory, yeah. It's not nice. Sadly, journals names cannot be copyrighted. They can only be trademarked. So a journal that's almost the same title in law is different. So, for example, in my field of biochemistry, we had the Journal of Biological Chemistry, a wonderful American journal, and for a few years there was a Journal of Biologicals Chemistry, published out of Pakistan. Totally fake, and they pulled the plug after a few years. Anyone who'd been fooled, everything's gone, black hole. So yeah, that's the sad thing. You can't copyright journals, only trademark them. That's just the patent law out there. Also, of course, check the aims and scope, make sure it hasn't changed, because if you send into a journal and they've changed the scope in the meantime, it's a very quick rejection. It's called an out-of-scope reject. Always check that they haven't left you behind, because aims and scope do slowly shift over years. And yeah, it's useful discussion amongst various co-authors to find out what you're going to be looking for. Bibliometrics, as I said, there's actually a whole line here. If you're interested, go look, Wikipedia, bibliometrics. So much stuff here, it's just untrue. So you're trying to find the right people, the right audience. And again, university library, great information about the blacklist and so on. Also, some libraries also have the time for publishing time. It's also a useful thing. We just launched this a few months ago. It's a journal finder. You put your abstract into this particular site. We had one for years. I must admit it was not very good. Then they threw an awful lot of money at it, AI skills, and now it's pretty good. However, it only looks for Elsevier journals. Just to let you know, it's out there, and I was surprised how good it was, considering how bad the last one was. So yeah, that's just to let you know. And then you and your co-authors have a list of journals for this particular manuscript. Say it's a method, but a different set of potential journals, and if it's not a method, for example. And so it could also be that one of your co-authors might have had a good experience publishing in one journal with good, useful tips, and so they actually wanted to go to that journal. So between you, you discuss in a pleasant way all the various possible types of journals you want to submit to. And you come up with what's called a cascade list. So A, B, C, D, E. So it's A, B, C, D, E. You don't send it to all 5 at once. It's called parallel submission, and you've lied. And when that gets found out, some journals will ban you for 2 years. So it's best not to. And there has been some work in Belgium in the life sciences. So I'm not sure how applicable it is to social sciences. But if you go through the whole process of peer review and you do all the things the referees say, what happens is actually sort of going down. Then after 3, 4, 5 of these processes, then you've polished the article enough to get in there. It might be that you might be 8 or 10, unfortunately, but at the same time, there's always a home somewhere for a reasonably well-written article. And once you have agreed the sequence list, A, B, C, D, E, Journal A is your journal of choice. You hope you don't have to write the article again. You hope Journal A is going to be the final, wonderful resting place of this particular manuscript you're just about to write. And then you read through a whole guide to authors, because the guide to authors will tell you things like perhaps word length, other similar things, and how they want the article laid out. And that makes it easier. As it is, you're going to be rewriting and writing and doing the draft of this, you and your co-authors, 5, 6, 7 times. So this is 1 time less by not writing it until you decided which journal is Journal A. Again, in the guide to authors, here is one version of doing this. Here's online here, or hypertext link. You can often download these things, but if it's more than, let's say, 3 or 4 months old, there'll be a few things in it which have changed, so better to always look at the online version. How important is the guide to authors? It's important because the editors use it to evaluate your paper using standards they have set. They write the final bits and pieces of the guide to authors. The generic area actually is standard per publishing house, but every single journal happens to has a little bits and pieces added by the editor-in-chief. That means that they really are a bit touchy about this. If they've spent hours working out the wording that they want you to use for the guide for authors to use to submit your paper, then if you send it in not like that, they get twitchy. And so some editors are laid back, some are not. Can you tell the difference? No, you can't. Always work on the principle that the guide to authors should be stuck to as best as you can. Here's one guy called Haddad. He happens to be Journal of Chromatography A editor. And if you ask any editor, they'll say the same thing, basically. Paper came in, out of scope. They didn't bother to read my scope. They didn't format the paper according to the guide to authors. They didn't send in useful reviewer suggestions. They didn't respond properly to the reviewers. The English quality was awful. And sometimes we got back papers which he rejected. They waited a few months, changed the title a bit, changed around the co-authors, sent it in again, hoping he wouldn't notice. As he notices. So this is the frustration of an editor. You can read that between the lines here. They're trying to help people out, and people think they're clever and outsmart these editors. It's not the idea. The idea is to work with the editors. They're trying to help you. There's another guy here. He's my editor-in-chief of protein expression purification. He says, I refuse to spend my time trying to understand what's going on. I can't send garbage in. If I find more than 6 grammatical errors in the abstract, let's reject. It's tough. It's tough out there. You think, well, I'll polish the English when I do the final version. You won't get a chance. You won't even go out to be reviewed to have comments of referees. It'll just be rejected. You've always got to send in the manuscript as well as it can be, as well polished as it can be, as if it is the final version. It might just be the final version. It might just be it gets in at one go. But always, always, always spend time making it as best as you can. And with the language also, again, we're not used to writing scientific English. You have to learn this. People have written lots of articles, you realise you've got short sentences, correct tense, You describe what's going on in the world in terms of your introduction, past tense, present tense. Describe your method, what you did, past tense, what you found, past tense, what it means, present tense, future tense. And that subconsciously tells the reader much more information if you get the tenses wrong. Grammar, you've just got to make sure it's right. And it's one of those things. 50 years ago, you could use 4 different languages to publish in. You looked English, French, German, or Russian. You had to have the abstract in all 4 languages. Times have changed. 50 years on, just English. Perhaps in 50 years' time, just Chinese. I don't know. But at the moment, I don't know. Now it happens to be just English. There are some fields where you do publish in your own language. Say national law, poetry. Some areas of social science around psychology, often in your own language. So from that point of view, it varies. If that's the case, fine. But if you are publishing internationally, English. So make sure that things are not slipped in. If you are bilingual, trilingual, make sure everything's in English. It helps. Guide to authors will tell you what sort of English. They're normally very, very clear in the guide to authors. You can use American spelling, you can use British spelling, but not a mixture. That's the normal way of saying it. So you, as the first author, make sure all your co-authors use the same spell checker. Simple, really. But also, you might be surprised, some journals say you must use American spelling. Often they're small American society journals. And some might say, only use British spelling. Same sort of thing, small British society journals. So if you send in a great article written with British spelling to an American society journal, which has this text, it's rejected. Wrong language. So you didn't bother to check the guide to authors. If you're not sure which one to use, American spelling or British spelling, any ideas? Only if you've got it set in your dictionary. You set dictionary British, and it will actually go to British. You can change the dictionary setting. Yep. Yeah. But do we use American spelling or do we use British spelling, people? Any ideas? American. Yeah. That's it. We lost. We lost. The British lost. Sorry, we lost. If you go to something like Google Scholar, look up a word spelled in both ways, a scientific word, it's a 7-to-1 ratio. 7 times more people are spelling in American. So therefore you want to think of the reader's needs. So you don't want to think, that's not how I spell colour. What's that S doing there on the Z? Whatever, you know. And so that's the thing to think about. It could be, if it's a British Society journal and you check the articles and they're all spelled in British, you might think, maybe this time I'll send it in British spelling, English spelling. It's your choice. But again, just be aware of these simple things people often don't think about. Yeah, sure, absolutely. There is more. More. Yeah.
Said that you write method in the past.
You might method typically in the past tense because you actually, here's what you did, here's what you did, here's what you found. Yeah, exactly. Discussion typically is in the present, and applications, conclusion is in the present and future. Applications. And now and in the future, this is how it can be applied. Yeah. Short sentences, just as when you're speaking. If you're not sure about the sentence length, read it out loud. If you pause for breath, it's too long. Simple as that. Now it's interesting that someone like, if you know from Portugal, in Portugal, they think it's elegant if they can actually run on an entire paragraph in one sentence. It's great in literature, not in science. In Italian also? Yeah.
You like it?
Fine, but not in science. So that's how it works. How about authors? Who's an author? All the people doing the research, aren't they? Yeah, of course they are. Maybe not. There's actually a few rules. It first started out with a bunch of medics. It was called the International Committee on Medical Journal Editors, also called the Vancouver Group, because they met in Vancouver. And then what happened is that they decided to be an author, you've got to be involved in contributing to concept, design, data acquisition, analysis, interpretation, involved drafting the article, revising it, approve the final version, and be accountable for all the content. This is changing slightly also on the fourth point. We're now getting into whereby they'll be talking about who did what in each of the various articles soon. That's coming in just next year. So that's definitely, it's coming in. It started in medicine about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's spreading out into the physical sciences and life sciences next year, and then out to other sciences shortly afterwards. So that's interesting. It's a way to see who's done what. Anyone else who's not done this is called acknowledged individual. So if someone, say a lab tech, helped you gathering the data, but she's not involved with the interpretation, then she's an acknowledged individual. If you want to have her as a co-author, get her involved in discussing what's going on, interpreting it, then she qualifies to be a co-author. Now, in terms of authorship, you also got the sequence. Who's first author, who's middle author, who's last author? In physics, it's easy. It's alphabetical. Rest of the world, there's a sort of norm, as it were. The first author is the one who's done most of the work, pulls it all together. You can have co-first authors, occasionally, about 1 in 200 papers, co-first author. And then all these various people are in there somewhere, and you agree amongst yourselves. And the last person, the senior author, is the one who's perhaps is the professor of the department or the principal investigator of the funding or whatever. Someone who's involved and supervises the whole project. So that's sort of the sequence where it goes. In most countries, that's just agreed amongst yourselves, and that's how it goes. It's published. In some places, there's also a point system. So in Germany, you get a certain number of points for the first author, a few less for the second author, and so on. The last author gets a certain number of points, and the second to last author gets a bit less than the last author. Very complicated. That's Germany. Not even Switzerland or Austria does that. That's Germany. Odd. Anyway, ghost authors. Who are ghost authors? No, it's not the paranormal. A ghost author is someone you've left out. How can you leave out an author? Well, it happens. I get about 1 email a month from people saying, I was left off the paper. There's a certain protocol we use. It's called the Committee on Publication Ethics. And that means we contact all the other co-authors and say, hi, this person said she should be a co-author, and what do you think of this? And most times the answer comes back, oops, we forgot her. Often it's a long project, 2 years or more. That person was involved in the beginning, moved on somewhere else. You didn't stay in touch with her, and then when it comes to writing up, she's forgotten about. And then you've got to go through with an erratum. The authors apologise that this author was missing and she should be in this point in there, and they apologise for any inconvenience. So you look stupid, basically. So the important thing is when you are writing it, work out all the best people involved, even if they moved on somewhere else, and then contact them and say, yes, we're writing it now, we'll send you the draft, you've got to be involved, of course. Make sure they're there. Point of protocol, their name at the top is this university, not what they are now. Asterisk, now at University X, fine. But that university was not where the work was done, so they don't go on the top line. That's how it works. Gift authors, people who shouldn't be there. Sometimes people will say, hey, I helped you polish the final version, I should be a co-author. No, you shouldn't. I'm the dean of the whole university, I should be a co-author. It happens in some Eastern countries and shouldn't be. Committee on Publication Ethics is really annoyed by these sort of things. They say, we're trying to stamp this thing out, trying to make it die off. We think it'll die off when they die off. But yeah, it happens. We do get people sometimes being added themselves. How can they be a co-author of 250 papers a year? They don't know what's in them. Yeah. Oh, I won't keep on going about that. Analysing trends and journal quality indicators. Do you remember about this? Or you just start from here? You start from this. There you are. The floor is yours. Yeah, yeah. In a blind review, process, you would have people who contributed. They would be, you mean because the double blind, they're actually not, yes, double blind. It's a good point. Perhaps you'd have to add them at the draft stage, at the proof stage. So after it's been gone through and not approved, then you have to check with the. I don't have any double-blind peer review about economic studies, for example. I don't know. It's a very good question. You probably have to ask the editor and see what the protocol is. And yeah, good point. Okay, there you are. You have a few slides and
yeah, just a few slides. Yeah, my name is Max. I'm a consultant, and I'm into the databases and like Scopus, like Mendeley, and some other solutions. And I think it's very important to know who you are before to find other collaborators outside the institution. So sometimes you have access to platforms that are paid by the institution, like Scopus. I don't know if you subscribe other platforms from competitors, probably yes. But sometimes it's something that only the research office is working with, and not you. And it's a little bit a pity, because you can find a lot of information on the platform. It's very important to know who you are and what's the impact of your institution, of your team, before to look for other people outside your institution. So this is Cybel. It's a platform we start from data from Scopus, but at the end of the day, you can find a lot of information about the University of Haifa. More or less, you published 25,000 documents. This is according to Scopus, and you are the home institution of, in total, 4,900 authors. All the publications in Haifa are mainly in social science. Social science is very, very strong. And then medicine, psychology. This is based on the classification, of course, of journals. Sometimes classification with the actual research doesn't make any sense because the research is multidisciplinary. So, but yeah, on database we like to create clusters, and with the whole science journals categories. This means that you are strong in social science, medicine, psychology, and then arts and humanities. And talking about collaborations, University of Haifa collaborate with Israeli institution mainly, Tel Aviv University.
Did you take these data only from Elsevier journals?
No, of course, it's based on Scopus, so it's, yeah, all the publications are considering Scopus. And you can find a lot of information about performance indicators, outputs in top citation percentiles. So as you can see, you are a little bit, the average in Israel is 15.2 and you are 9.3. And also international collaboration, a little bit below the average. You collaborate a lot with Tel Aviv University, Technion, of course, and also Hebrew University of Jerusalem. But if you take a look to the list of all the collaboration, all the institutions you collaborate with, the first international one is from the United States, is in 15 rank. So we have probably to improve the collaboration with other international institutions. And also it's very important, the publication in top journal percentiles, just a little bit below the average, and also the academic corporate collaboration. But it's also related to your where you are strong. You are strong in social science, so maybe the collaboration with corporates is not so important. But yeah, it's important to know who you are, to find the right collaborations. And collaboration are really important because if you collaborate with the others, you can see the slide. Maybe it's too small, but who is publishing with collaboration with the other international institution? In your case, it's 41.2%. The scholarly output and the citation is larger than if you consider only national collaboration or only institutional collaboration. So if you collaborate with other institutions, other researchers from other institutions, the metrics are growing, the number of citations are larger, and this is really, really important, to perform better. All the data are from Scopus. Are you using Scopus as database? Yes? Okay. On Scopus, you can find a lot of information. You can search for other affiliation profiles, other author profiles. You can find more than 5,000 publishers and 23,000 serial titles. But maybe you can analyze, you can see the citation of document set and so on. But maybe you don't know the topics. Do you know the topics on Scopus? This is something quite fresh. It's new. We have the topics since 1 year, more or less. What are the topics? Topics are a collection of documents related, clustered all together, because they have a common interest, a common research problem. So it's not a classification top down, but is starting from the articles. So in Scopus, all the articles are clustered, and this cluster is based on a common interest. So as you can see here, you can find a lot of different topics when you are looking at the articles. So this topic is plastics, marine pollution, microplastic particles. But this is not important. They are just keywords, just to let you understand what it's about. But with the topics, you can find the top authors. So you can see who are the most prolific authors in this topic. You can see the representative documents related to these topics. And you can also see in this cloud what are the keywords who are growing or decreasing, because the topics are dynamic, are multidisciplinary. They can grow, they can decrease in importance. They can simply, they can be large, new, they can change. So they are a nice way to find ideas and to check if your publication are into a specific topic and what is the prominence of this topic in the research. What about the metrics? Anthony told about a lot of metrics. This is a slide which is talking about the impact factor. Impact factor take into account number of citation is the annual average number of citation per document. And if you consider the number of citation during the time, you can see the peak of the citation is around after 3 years. So it's a metric which can be very, very useful to evaluate journals where to publish. This is a slide which is considering the impact factor and how it's calculated. It's easy, number of citation during 1 year, and the ratio is with the documents published in the 2 or 5 years before. But this is also something that can be used just to evaluate one journal, but not to compare different journals, because the influence of impact factor is the subject area differences. You have a lot of differences between subject areas about the citation, number of citations. So as you can see, if you compare a journal in neuroscience with the one in mathematics, the number of citation and the attitude in citing is completely different. So you can use other metrics to evaluate journals. Scopus is offering 3 different metrics to evaluate journals. One is the site score, is more or less close to the impact factor, but it's based on 3 years and is also based on all the journals indexed in Scopus. So this means that you can have this metric for more than 25,000 journals at the moment. And then also 2 different metrics, the SNP and the SJR. They are normalized, so you can use these metrics to compare journals from different fields. The source normalized impact per paper is from CWTS of the University of Leiden. It's based on the number of citation in different subject fields, and the Shimago Journal rankings from SGR is a Spanish institution who is very strong in bibliometry, and this is a prestige metric. This means that a citation from a very important journal has a different weight if compared with a citation from a small or a brand new journal with a very small impact. Also in Scopus you can find a lot of tools in order to compare different journals. So if you have a list of the journal where you want to publish. You can compare them and you can see different metrics for different journals. So you compare them by year with different metrics like SNP, citation, documents, percentage of not cited cited articles, and also percentage and review articles by year. What else? Having a common research problem is a common topic is key for collaboration. So also is important not only to, if you have to look at collaboration, probably this is very tough because you have to search other collaborators based on publications or through databases. Another nice thing is to be visible to other researchers in order to be findable. And to be findable, probably you have to showcase your production and maybe share your publication, share your data. And so it's very important also to be visible on database or institutional repositories and publish also your raw data. This is very, very important in Europe. Europe 2020 is starting to ask to share all the raw data of the research. And you can do it with different repositories. You can use the institutional repositories. You can use also tools like Mendeley. Mendeley is a reference manager, but also is providing you data sets. It's totally free. And on Mendeley dataset, you can store, share, and cite data sets on the online repositories. The important point is when you are sharing your data on Mendeley data, you will receive a DOI. So this is what Anthony said before. If you want to be sure that your idea will be, safe, publish the preprint of the article or maybe the data of the article of your research on a repository who is providing to you a DOI. Is like a mark, and it's very important for you in order to defend and to keep your idea and your research safe from other one to copy or to stall this. With Mendeley, you can share the data, you can get the DOI, you can cite, so you can also link your research data to published papers. You can link to other datasets and softwares. You can get the DOI. So this means you are citable and you can cite dataset from the others. And also, you can have different version of your dataset. And of course, you have a long-term preservation of your data. So you can find a lot of articles now who are, citing data just with a link to repositories. And research data for this article, you can see a lot of different articles have the link and the citation to the data. Why should I share my research data? You can get credit, of course. You can get more citation. It's very important for the research community because, of course, other research can duplicate experiment and save time. Sometimes it's also important for the society because it's for transparency and also for the policies from government and funders. Yes, please.
If it's a private study, you have to share the data?
It depends. You have to look at what the funder is asking.
If there is a funder, but also you might want to anonymize it, put it out there publicly, or you could have it out there as one version, not anonymized, and later do another version anonymized,
Yeah.
make it public. Also,
Raw data sometimes, yeah.
Because in the past we have to publish it and share it after a few years.
That's the
embargo.
That's the paper. That's the embargo. But the actual data itself, you can do it. You can put it out there earlier, before you publish it. Except for Nature and Science. Nature and Science call it pre-publication. Every other journal in the world says fine.
And raw data usually can be shared with everyone.
Yeah, as long as it's anonymized, it needs to be.
Yeah.
With patient data.
The raw data, but we promise our we don't publish it, we keep it, and the raw data, we keep it safe in our computer.
Okay.
We cannot put it out there, right?
Okay, well, it depends. If you have a funding body in the future who says, where are you going to publicize your data, you've then got to agree with them what the deal is. It might be in the future, you say to your interviewees, we will be publishing the data totally anonymized, so don't worry, trust us. So again, you have to deal with this in the future. It's not going to go away. So the idea of transparency is definitely, it's coming in, more and more year by year, for sure. Which is good, I think, because it saves fake papers, fake research. There's a bit too much of that, certainly in Netherlands with psychology.
Does it mean when it's open, it's also available for others to use it for to analyze it and write something about it?
Yes. And this is a DOI, they'll cite you too.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's also a great place to put inconclusive results. So here's what we found. It's nothing to publish yet, but we couldn't find anything conclusive. Perhaps someone else can get better analysis of our data. Or we did this great experiment, it failed. Please don't reproduce it. It saves people wasting time. So again, that's the sort of this whole concept of sharing data. It's quite neat, I think. It's certainly changed so much in the last 20 years, for sure. It really was, I'll wait till I patented it. Or once I've published it after a year or two, then I might let you have the data, maybe not. That's all changed, totally changed. Yeah, it really is. It's a real game changer. It really is.
And do they need to have permission from you to analyze it and publish it?
It depends what you're making available. If you're making it available publicly, then they can just take that data and then they can then analyze it and then publish it, linking to your data. Here's what we found and here's what we make of it. Often they'll link to several different data sources, including yours, and say, here's what we think is going on in this particular field, based on these data. So it's every field's a bit different.
On the mandatory data, you can decide what kind of license you can use. So it depends by the license.
Yeah.
So you can decide to have everything open, and then the license is the CC by, I don't remember.
NCND.
Yeah. So it also depends by the license.
Yeah, interesting times, huh? It really is. It's certainly not a static field. Everything's moving, constantly. This is a bit more traditional. Article structure. Is there a certain way to write an article? There's lots of different ways. If a journal tells you what to do, use their way. If they don't tell you, there's a few other options. Look what's happening in the journal itself, or otherwise, here's a suggestion for how you can perhaps structure a research article. This is a fish. Why a fish? Why not? Why not? It's a picture. I want you to think in pictures. We think in pictures, we're humans. So what's the rationale is more importantly. Now, a fish has a head, a body, and a tail, and your article has a head, a body, and a tail. Simple. So that's how you lay it out, typically. Some journals ask you differently. Some ask for structured abstract. Some ask for the method section to be done a bit differently. The social sciences has a lot more discussion, of course, than far less data. We know. Reviews are different, microarticles are different, but this is the basic idea. And be as concise as you can be. Now, English second language, do write concisely, normally too concisely. Add a few more, sort of prepositions and the like. English first language, write too much. Knock off a few adjectives. So yeah, make it as concise as you can do to save your reader having to spend longer than they need to. Now, this is how you structure it once you've actually written it. But you actually write it that way, blank piece of paper, you start with title. Not at all. That's not the way. Think of it like you're building an article like building a wall. Think of it like this. This is a timeline here. You start with your figures and tables, your comfort zone, your data. The methods you use to get there, describe. Then the results you want to share with the reader. You discuss those. You write your conclusion. Then you write your introduction. Then the title, abstracts, and keywords. So that's sort of the way. Once you've done that, you then deconstruct it and then do it this way. Now, if you do it another way at the moment, fine. Try the wall system, see if it's any easier. If you find it's not, go back to your old way. I wish I had been shown this when I was writing papers. I wasn't. That's why I'm so keen to share this with you. Fish style, not wall style, fish style. Title, first. How do you get seen by researchers? They actually have to go find you. So they'll go look with keywords and they'll find your title. If that title is interesting, they'll read the rest. So the title has to be the main issue of the paper. The first few words of the title has to be what it's about. And it's going to be accurate, specific, complete, and as short as possible. The two things are opposites, I know. You'll find young graduate students at conferences with a poster, 3 lines of title. No. Short and snappy. You know. Referees are not helpful. Normally they do not give advice on your title. We ask them to, but they think it's outside of their remit. And so they don't often help you. Some editors will help you, suggesting titles occasionally. But in effect, that's the weakness of the current peer review system. Referees don't think they should comment on your title. But they should do. Make it snappy and short. If you're not sure, ask people who are more senior, have a working title, and try and polish it as you go along whilst you're writing your article. Yes, the idea is to hook people in so they go deeper into your article. Of course, to find you first, they've got to use keywords. They're going to use a few keywords in their favorite search engine, put things in, see what comes up. If your article is there, great. So what you're doing as an author, a few keywords you think will work, favorite search engine, see what comes up, not Google, please. A favorite search engine, see what comes up. Okay, these articles, are they basically what I am busy with? If there's too many hits, that means you've got too much noise, not enough signal. So perhaps fine-tune the keywords a bit. If your keywords are so specific, you get 8 hits in the entire world, a bit too narrow. You're looking for 100, 200 titles in the last few years. That's a nice sort of ballpark figure to go for. And then see what your keywords have come up with and see if you know all those articles. If you don't, read through some of those, because if they are interesting articles, you might want to cite them. Now what happens is when you send your paper into the journal, it goes out to a referee. They'll use their favourite search engine and your keywords to see reasonable list of references. And if you've not added some of these ones you just found, they're going to say, why didn't these authors add these useful papers? Were they being lazy, or did they just not look, or what's going on here? Because the way you find references now is very abstract. It's almost by accident you find things. This is a structured way to find things in your field using keywords. So use it as a sanity check to make sure you haven't missed anything out. And you might find some interesting revelations amongst these papers, things you didn't know, because you haven't ever bothered to do this sort of structural search in the past. Abstracts, the next bit, using the fish model, not the wall model. And the abstract is you tell people what you did. Here's what we did, here's what we found. Some journals are pretty vicious. They say this much. And if you've got to say this much, it gets complicated. In general, they're reasonable. Some journals not, but most are reasonable. And if they allow you to highlight bullet points, great, because that doesn't count in the number of abstract words. And graphical abstracts even better, because that's also nice, a nice visual picture. It's a way for referees to decide if they want to review your paper or not. They don't get to see the entire paper. They're sent the title and the abstract, and depending on the journal and the field, the authors and the affiliation. And based on the title and abstract, and perhaps the other bits, they decide if I want to review this paper or not. If you've got a nice strong abstract, a lot of people just sling the abstract together almost at the last minute. You shouldn't. You should really be thinking about it. What's its purpose? Its purpose is to tell people, here's what we did, here's what we found. That's it. Simple as that. Then, of course, you do the fish model, introduction. Where does our work fit into the overall scheme of things? How is our work important to you, the reader? And that's important to try and find the relevance for that particular, the readers. Are there problems, are there solutions, on what's good, what's not good, what's best, what's limitations? What do you want to achieve? As you've written this, wall style, after you've written conclusions and discussion, you should be able to make sure they match. Huh? You're not writing a history lesson. Short and to the point. Introduction, here's the situation, here's a few references to recent review or a seminal paper or something, and that's where you go from. Nothing else more than that. Introduction, results, they're all different places. There's a whole sequence going through. Remember, this logical line? You don't use things like amazing, novel, Nobel Prize material. No. No. Referees will hate that. I can guarantee it. Only relevant references. References have two purposes. One is it tells the reader who doesn't know what's going on, they can link, normally hypertext link, zip, read that bit, come back. Perfect. Briefing the reader. Also, it's validation for your work. You've done your research work based on these people. That's enough validation. You don't have to say why else you did it. Just because they did this, you've based your work on that. Your method, your experiments. A referee would love to look over your shoulder while you're doing all the work. They can't. They rely on your description. If your methods look reasonable, then probably the results you're describing are okay. Any conclusion from that might be okay. If your method looks a bit suspect, a bit dodgy, a bit vague, any results you're reporting are probably a bit dubious, any conclusion irrelevant. So they really want to make sure they're very comfortable with your method. Some journals are not very helpful. They say you've got this much space. If you need this much, you do a cut down version and say the full method protocol can be found in the supplementary file. So anyone who wants to follow that, you think of this like every method should be reproducible. You've got a friend in, I don't know, Paris, and you want them to reproduce your work. Will they be able to do that using your method? If they can't, you've written it wrongly. If they do this and they can't reproduce your experiment, and they spend time, money, maybe even experimental animals, and they can't get the results, are they going to cite you? No. Are they going to tell you what they think of you when they see you at a conference? Yes. Think of them wanting to reproduce your work. If they're interested enough to reproduce it, they're interested enough to cite you when it works. So be helpful to them. Really is important. Of course, make sure that any kit is the equipment is mentioned very clearly, what brand it is, what model it is, and so on. If you use certain chemicals with certain purity, make sure you mention those. Control experiments must be there. You write in the past tense. Some journals say use the passive voice, some active. If they don't mention it, you assume it's passive, but some journals, particularly some American journals, will ask you to write in the active voice. So we did this, as opposed to this was done. If you are short of space, the active voice uses less words than the passive voice. And then, of course, supplementary materials are these extra things you can put in if need be. So that's the important thing is make sure it's reproducible. And if it's not reproducible, then it's a waste. Another thing that's important, particularly for junior researchers, is knowing how much information to share with the reader. Typically, young investigators feel they have to somehow validate things. Say, well, here's what we did, and here's the results. Vromp. Far too much. Your skill as a researcher is this iceberg here. This is what you're going to share with the reader. That's what you're not going to share with the reader. That's the idea. You've got to work out what am I going to share. Just the amount to tell your story. A nice, logical, true story, just so you've got them nodding along with you and they can see where you're coming from. It's the main findings. So work out what are the main findings, decide amongst you and your co-researchers, co-authors, see which methods were used to get those, and those are the methods you describe. You don't want to describe methods that are used down here, because that will just not match. If you find anything a bit different, a bit weird, do you delete it? No. You check it, double check it, make sure it's not an artifact, and then that's good, that's for later, that will actually make your science special. Make sure your stats are right. If you're not sure which stats package to use, there's people in your university who can advise you on this, because the wrong stats package will make your results perhaps a bit too strange. So really it's very important. Also mention which stats package you used as well. Reproducibility. Results, use as many figures as you can. We think in pictures. We see pictures. Fish, wall, and so on. Why? It's a human condition. If you can actually use a figure and a figure legend instead of 10 lines of text, wonderful. You don't do both. The figure and figure legend is easier for you to do than to write the 10 lines of text. It's easier for the reader to absorb the information. It's a win-win. So again, if you have a figure, make sure you don't reproduce it, the same thing in text. If you need to do, say, 3 or 4 lines of figure legend to do that job properly, so be it. It's okay. And when you are doing your figures, think also about clarity. It's a 3D plot or a 2D plot, whatever. And of course, if you are presenting in perhaps locally as well, make sure that's in English, not in Hebrew. All photographs should have a scale marker. And again, nothing else that's a bit weird there. This should be, if you're using color, fine. But also think about using stars or squares or something. If you print this out in black and white, this is grey and grey, look the same. You can't tell. You're forcing the reader to find a color printer. So at least do something here and here where it's easier to see. This is drug crystals, it says here. Now, if you happen to be pharmacology paper, but if you know exactly what it is, and you can describe it in the figure legend, it might be a bit easier to say, oh, actually, you can see this, see, drug crystals. Something to help the reader. Again, just think of this as assisting. And one thing about figures also, when you are using figures, if you make any changes to the figures, many journals, if you like to say fine-tuning the color balance or something, many journals will say you must put the original unchanged image in a supplementary file. So anyone who's a bit concerned you might be a bit too keen with the Photoshop controls, you can see where you started from. That's very important. This transparency idea nowadays. Discussion, you can discuss what's going on. If you've got, say, 8 results, your top of your iceberg, you discuss all 8. You discuss 6 of them, and 2 you either chop out or you discuss. You can't have a different number. You can't say, here's 8 results, I'll discuss 6 of them. It doesn't work that way. Do the results relate to the original question? I hope so, because you wrote this after you wrote this. If you find things other people haven't found, make clear. Other people have found this, reference. We're sure that we found this. It's not an artifact. Here's what we think is going on. So you're not actually shying away from it. You're not hiding the fact that other people have found different things. You just mention it in a very clear, easy way. You might be wrong. It might be what you found is very interesting, but it's another thing. Other people look at your results and analyze it separately. But at least you noticed it, remarked upon it to the community. They can look at it, study it some more, either agree with you or at least say, well, actually, this has been found. We disagree with that discussion. Here's what we think is going on. But they'll cite you if you're the person who found it. Are there limitations? Perhaps there are. Perhaps you can't reproduce the study anymore because that particular cohort of people have all been washed away in a tidal wave. I don't know. Or perhaps the cell line has died. I don't know. But this is all the various things you've got to mention in your discussion. And you're not used to doing it. Again, it's
Thank you. Wow.
Thank you for having there. What's happening? You're having a loudspeaker. Having a loudspeaker taking us over here. Okay. So, and then of course you're not making things that are beyond what results say. That's the important thing. Two-way microphone. We don't want a two-way microphone. Yeah. The microphone. Yeah. So someone's got the microphone going. Okay, fine. So you actually have, this is your challenge to listen to someone speaking in your language, listen to me speaking on something different. Can you do this? Can you become schizophrenic? Let's try. Okay. So, again, conclusions, applications, immediate applications, future applications. Any future experiments you're doing, great, mention it. Any future experiments need to be done, mention it. In effect, you're saying, these are the experiments that still need to be done, and these are the ones that we're doing now, those we're not doing. So what you're saying is, reader, don't worry, we'll report on those in due course. Some people will read that and say, shucks, they got there first. In effect, what they're reading is, keep away. Okay, that's fine. But some people will read that and say, oh, they're doing that. Okay, let's approach them and see if we can do a collaboration. It's also possible. The more collaboration you can get, particularly internationally, as you heard from Max, the more citations you get. You're not going to summarize the paper, that's the abstract's job. You're not going to say how amazing it is. That's only for people who cite you can say how amazing it is. You can't. Simple as that. There's something called humility. Enthusiasm, but humility. References, just use the reference system they say. Normally, of course, you use a reference management system. That's perfect. It's your job, not the publishing house editors, to get it right. Try not to use personal communications, unpublished things. Try to find references in English, if you're going to write in English, make it easier on the referees to understand you and the readers to understand what's going on. Because if you can only find something in Finnish, so be it, or Hebrew, it's far better to do something in English, because that's what everyone's going to be reading as their common scientific language. Wikipedia, reference management software, comparison, perfect, hear what's going on. We happen to like Mendeley, we're a bit biased. We found it so good we bought it. But these ones are the two common ones in Europe. The good thing about reference management systems, reference output for Journal A, if you're not successful with Journal A and you go to Journal B, you just punch a different code in and download it to Journal B. From that point of view, it's far easier to get your new set of references in the style that journal wants, Journal B wants. Supplementary material are things that you put at the bottom of the article, things like multiple graphs or multiple figures, things that you didn't particularly want to share with all the readers. It could be that this amazing, huge Excel file, which 8 people in the world will find amazing. Fine, put it in a supplementary file, not in the main article. It's simple. They must relate to, it's not saying, oh, we published that, in other words, we found a place to lose it. That's not what it's about. Some referees go very diligently through every single bit of supplementary data. Some do not. You have to assume that they will, please. Cover letter, something else. Cover letter is, it's like when you're applying for a job, you just send in your CV or CV and a letter saying, I'm applying for the vacancy. Normally you do the letter. Same thing with sending in an article. The editor's job is to filter out the junk and to look for good things. So you're going to tell them it's a good thing, basically. It goes with your manuscript. It says why it's special to the journal. It might be, this is the place that everyone publishes stuff in this field, the place. Or it could be you've read many articles where they're complaining about something, there's no method for this, you've got the method. Or whatever you think is appropriate. And you've then got to say, okay, 1 page maximum, everyone agrees it should be published. Here's why it's important to the field in your journal. And if you're not asked during the submission process, here are some potential referees. If you have already uploaded potential referees, you can use this for potential not referees. A not referee? Someone you don't want to see it until after it's published. Because it could be that you know there's a group in Toronto and a group in Melbourne, Australia working on the same thing as you. You can say to the editor-in-chief, hey, I'd rather you didn't send it to this group and this group until I want to see this after it's published, not before. Technically, if those people are asked, they should decline to review the paper. It's too close to them as a conflict of interest. But they might just. So if you want to be a bit preemptive here, you can say not those, not those. And they normally will listen to you, the editor-in-chief. If you say, here's a list of people I don't want it sent to, I guarantee they'll send it to a couple of those to find out why. No, they're not stupid. Potential reviewers, if you ask to, its job is to help you move your paper through. If they're not sure who to use, your suggestions will be helpful. They might think, oh yeah, I forgot that person. Yeah, right. They'll look them up. Always make sure you use an institutional email address. You don't ask the referee if you can use their name, because the editor might not choose them. It's anonymous peer review, remember? So you look for various people. Who would you like to have? Whose opinion would you like to have? Would you really, people you saw recently at a talk, or perhaps someone who you cited in an introductory paragraph of your paper? Whatever. Make sure they're still alive. It's happened. It's happened. If it's your field and the editor's field and he knows they've died and you haven't mentioned it, you don't look very in control of what's going on out there. So always make sure that they are around. You know? They might decline, they're too senior, but they might pass it on to a postdoc. It's also possible. There should be a couple of regions of the world. There shouldn't be your supervisor, there shouldn't be your uncle in Canada or whatever. Some journals ask for 8 reviewers. Why? Because typically 3 to 6 gets 2 to say yes. One of my journals asks for 8 because they have to ask 8 people to get 2 to say yes. That's the way it goes. And sometimes the editor knows exactly who. Yeah. Some journals ask for 3. But basically, some might ask 15 people to get 2 to say yes. So that's really hard work. You think, is this the right journal for this? My community doesn't know. This is a tough. That's why editors sometimes have a tough job. But yeah, and it's. It is, but you don't ask all of them. You actually have you have them in reserve in our system. So if one declines, the next person gets promoted to be asked. It's a sort of a sequential thing. So they'll put these in reserve. Don't ask all of them, or else what will upset. If 3 people or 4 people say yes, and then you get in 2 answers, you then write to the other ones and say, actually, we don't need it now, and you're halfway through the review. That's not fair on that person either. You've got to get the balance right. Yeah. And so if they know who they're going to use, they'll look at your suggestions. If your suggestions are actually pretty good, they'll think, oh, okay, this author knows the right people. They've just validated you as an author. It's also useful to have. So this is basically the thing you're going to be doing. You're going to be polishing and polishing and polishing. Waiting a few days, polishing it a few more, asking your people, colleagues who aren't involved, what are their thoughts. And they'll be critical, hopefully in a nice way. And then you as all your co-authors look at these changes and decide what you're going to change, who's going to change it. You make all the changes, and then you polish it all, make sure it really is as high quality English as you can get. Make sure all of the co-authors agree with the final version you're going to send in. You've got to ask that, or else what happens is if one doesn't see it, if you didn't send it to them, they can ask you it be taken down. Then you say, okay, we're there. It's taken them months. We're there. And it's not a black hole, it just seems like a black hole. Starts off here, it goes to the editor. What we do first is we do a little comparison check for overlap, so-called plagiarism check. Editor looks at this and says, okay, is it within scope? Yes? Okay, fine. Is it within scope? No, out of scope? Out of scope, reject. Can I understand the English? Forget it. Okay, reject. If it's good enough, which referees should I ask? Who's the best people in the world to ask? Referees are not linked to journals, they're linked to the field. So ask a couple of people, and then one might say yes, one might not answer, and after about 2 weeks they time out, the next person gets asked. And eventually 2 will say yes, they're given 2 to 3 weeks. Social sciences, they're given typically 4 to 5 weeks to come back with their recommendations. And then they're collected. Sometimes the editor will say, hey, referee 2, I've already had 1 reply back. You're being a bit tardy here. Can you please, we're waiting on you. And then with these recommendations, the editor says, okay, reject, accept as is, or revise. That's a workflow. Accept as is rare. It's rare. It's actually, it's 1 in 200 is the average. That's why I asked who's published 50 or 100. 1 in 200. If you actually have published 30 papers and one is accepted as is, wow, Of course, the next one they get rejected is a bummer, but that's life, you know. But just be aware the odds are against you. Everyone gets rejected, even Nobel laureates. When you get rejected, you're allowed to get angry for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, tops. You and your co-authors all agree, either together or by Skype call, yeah, it's all idiots, stupid referees and stupid... Then you calm down, you reread what it says. Sometimes it says, your article is rejected unless you do this, and then resubmit. That's called a reject with hope letter. We actually have those. So always read the small print. Don't just glaze over the word reject. Get someone else to read it. See what the other authors, if you agree what it says. If it does say basically, go away and die, well not quite, it says, go away, don't come back, then you know definitely journal A is out. Okay, fine, fair enough. In which case you work out, is what they said okay? Is it real? Really that bad? Okay, we're that bad. Okay. What are we going to do about it, guys, gals? So you agree amongst yourselves who's going to fix which bits. And you go away and do that, because then you want to make that article even better, because you're now going to send it into Journal B. Cascade, A, B, C, D, E. Journal B, great. Read the guide to authors of Journal B, restructure it a bit, perhaps a different reference style. Make sure you're covering there that says Journal B, not Journal A. They hate each other. I'm serious, they do. So make sure the trick is to label it on your computer, cover letter journal so-and-so. So when you start to upload it to the other journal, you think, oh, oops, and you stop in time. You do not want to antagonize the editor-in-chief. They're human beings. Some barely, I know, but yeah. Anyway, so that's what you do. It's a sequence. What happens if it's a revision? If it's a major revision, it goes back to these people to see if you fixed it enough. If it's a minor one, it goes to the editor who says, is it fixed enough? Are all the points addressed? And so what you do is you do what's called a point by point. So they hope you can fix it, but they're not really sure. Here, all the things they say, they'll be okay. 9 times out of 10. No guarantees there. So what you do, the thing you must never do is read through all the things they say, make all the changes, and say to the editor-in-chief, thank you for all this, it made sense, we fixed it, here it is. Without saying what you've done. Guarantee reject. Because they want to know what you've done. So you do a point by point. Cut, here's the comments, and paste the comments here, and here's what you did about it. Here's this, here's that, here's that, here's that. And that's how you do the whole thing. Some journals ask you to color code it, some ask you to use line numbers. If you disagree with one of the comments of the referees, and all authors disagree, you either have to swallow your pride and do it, or alternatively, you do a rebuttal. You say to the editor, we don't want referee A.3 we take into account because we think we're right here, not her, him, whoever it is. So we think here's why. A very strong, solid, convincing, polite rebuttal as to why you think that should stay. If you can convince the editor it stays, that stays in the record of science forever, long after you've passed on. But what will happen is the editor will pass on your rebuttal text to that referee saying, the authors have asked for a rebuttal on this point, and based on this information, I'm giving it to them. If the editor comes back to you and says, disagree with you, it's your choice. You either say, okay, we'll fix it, or forget it, we'll go somewhere else. Depends on what you as a group of co-authors want to do. It's your paper. You decide what you do. That's very important. And of course, once you have polished it all, second time around, get your English is right. You might say, oh yeah, the first version was polished. We've added all the things that the referee said. No. We've added all the things the referee said. It's repolished. All the co-authors agree the final version. You hope it's the final version. And that's when you send it in again. Make sure it's all been through this process of everyone approving it and it's well polished. In theory, this should be the final version that goes up online forever. So make sure it's right. That means you should be one of the 30%, not one of the 70%. That's the basic idea. You've got to be consistent, check and double check your work, logical to the story, and make sure the referee's comments are taken on board. Make your paper better, that's the idea. Right? I'll let you read that through. You can read quicker than I can read. critical, be ethical. Ethics, very important. A few slides on open access, not much, because you've got so much available here in-house. Gold open access. What's gold open access? Author pays, or university pays, or funder pays, or someone pays. Not the library, basically. That means it's the copyright of the authors. It goes online straight away. You get much more downloads. At the moment, it looks like the number of citations is about the same with subscription articles. But at the moment, gold open access, far more downloads for sure. Green open access is basically open archiving, whereby for a certain time it's available either in your institutional repository or somewhere else. Why do people publish open access? It varies, typically because the community expects it. Genetics, for example, or other similar things. All the funding body asks you to do it. If you are going to publish gold open access, again, same rules as a regular conventional journal. Find the right journal. See what the funding body wants, see what institute policy is. There's different sorts of licensing too. TCBY, CCBY, NCND, and so on. Some publishing houses have different rates, ABCs for different licensing. We don't, but some do. And once you've got it, it's yours, you own it, it's your copyright, share it with the world. ResearcherAcademy.com has information. It's here to stay, learn about it. And it's also interesting stuff happening. Something called transformative agreements are happening. These are we know in a perfect world, everything's open access. Currently, 80% is not. There has to be a transition. How do we get there? And everyone's disagreeing about how we get there. 20 years' time, we'll be there. Now, we're not. So how are we going to get there? It might take 10 years, it might take 20 years, I don't know. But everyone in the world should be able to read everything for free, for sure. It has to be somehow paid by some mechanism. There are certain experiments, for example, in the Netherlands funding bodies, to work out some way of having open access publishing and also reading for some sort of a construction. And a similar sort of thing up in Poland and in Hungary as well. But it's all happening, all changes. And probably next year we'll be talking with the UK. So it's work in progress. Neat. Promoting your article, we do it, of course. Publishing houses do it. But at the same time, you do it yourself too. Social media, there's lots of good things you can do. Again, Researcher Academy will give you information. There's always things you can download and all sorts of booklets and the like. The last thing I want to focus on, I did promise I'd be done in 2 hours. I'll be done in 2 hours and 5 minutes. I apologise. I'm rushing through, as you noticed. We've got lots of responsibilities and lots of rights. We do actually have to be very, very aware of ethics. Research ethics and publication ethics. Sometimes we accidentally plagiarise without being aware of it. And that can have repercussions on us because people don't really believe you did it accidentally, sadly. This is for sure. If you make something up totally and the results is totally different, or the images are wrong and so on, then yeah, that's not true. Plagiarism, you're actually having a situation where you're taking... 5 minutes? 4 minutes? 4 minutes. Thank you. Great. I'll speak faster. Miss some slides. Easy. So plagiarism, again, very useful thing, very important thing to do. Shifting the publication, I already talked about. Shouldn't do that. Submission, I talked about. Citing people. Talked about ghost authors and conflict of interest. Plagiarism, you've actually got to cite everyone. If you're using text from someone else, use that text in speech marks initially in your draft, and then with that, next to it, you put the reference. As you're doing the various versions of the draft, rewrite it into it, but keep the reference there, or alternatively, keep the speech marks in. That's how you can do it accidentally. That I've talked about, general publication. Authenticate is what's used at the moment, and that is what I'm going to share with you. This was sent in, this was sent somewhere later. The system says these two things are the same text. That text is that text, that's that, that's that. And that is that. So basically, these people here made a new paper from nothing. Control C, Control V, cut paste. And what happens is it gets retracted. It stays up forever, like that. Figure manipulation, you can change some things around, but some things you can't do. You can do this, you can't do that. So this is the paper, American Journal of Pathology. It's great. That's very simple. It's just fluorescent cell staining. But someone took this, and in Photoshop they bumped up the signal, and it dots here and there, and republished it to someone else. But now it's, of course, retracted. Not good. I won't go into these. On the last panel is that. So we're going to send around to you a list. This, do not try it yet, this link, because you won't be able to get this slide set until we put it up there in about a day's time, 2 days' time. But this particular code will get you access to the slide set and a few other things, and you'll be sending this around. I'll give you this information. These email addresses, that's me for the next 3 years. Until I retire in 3 years. And I do answer emails, honest. And 1 minute past 4. Okay. Should have started on the dot of 2. You would have made it. Okay. I rushed through it. I understand that. 110 slides. You get the slide set. Any questions, get back to me. It's been recorded. You listen to the recording again. You don't understand anything, check out online, check with your librarian, check with us. Be aware, you look behind the curtain now. You can see what's out there. Hopefully it will make it easier for you when you are publishing slides in the future, publishing papers in the future. When you go to publish your next paper, skim through this just to remind yourself what you've still got to do. Particularly the checklist, which you'll have, the PDF checklist, which will be coming with the other list, which you'll get. At that point, I think we actually have to be thrown out for your colleague. And any questions we'll deal with outside. Okay? Thank you.